And to not recognize that things change is a good path for financial and self-destruction. Whether it's your marital life, your family life, your educational life, things do change. The tax code is no different. Good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angi Kinser.
Happy to have you along. We are talking tax.
Yes.
And the IRS and throwing penalty flags, none of which I like. No. I really appreciated the last game we watched, by the way. There were only three penalties or four penalties going into the fourth quarter. That was pretty cool. But,
yes. But
regardless, go ahead.
The IRS can be a tough opponent when it comes to imposing these penalties. So I do have some specific penalties.
Okay, so let's stop. Tough. I got to say this. Tough opponent.
Yes.
And this is an important part of this venture that we have, the conversation that we have, if you will. Right, so there are flags that can get thrown that can't be challenged. Mm-hmm. For those of you that are football people, right, there are plays that can be challenged, right? Like all touchdowns are reviewed, if you will. So there's some things that can be challenged and some things that cannot. And that is part of where Angie's heading with this discussion, I think.
Yes, we've got some specific penalties to talk about, but I did have a question that I brought in today from a viewer, because I know many of the families we take care of tend to be hesitant, to use funds from their retirement savings. But millions of Americans tapped into their 401k and IRA balances to access emergency cash amid the COVID pandemic, as allowed under the CARES Act. Now, as tax time approaches, what decisions have to be made about those withdrawals?
So there's a few of them. The first one is, do you want to put the money back, right? If you want to put the money back, you can. That's a good one, if you can afford it. The second one is you're going to pay the taxes either this year, last year, or over a 3-year period of time. All right, so and we had this conversation earlier. You weren't on that call. I've Zoomed all day long, so I apologize. But understanding the United States tax code is a little difficult because you got a progressive system. You got a series of stair steps where the more income you make, the higher your tax rate is going to be. So you have an average, right? So if we look at Angie's massive salary and we divide it equally, you've got an effective tax rate. But if we look at the last dollar that's taxed, that's what we call your marginal rate, right? So when CPAs do tax returns, they always show you your effective. And effective matters, don't misunderstand. But when it comes to financial planning, your marginal rate really is what is critical, because the decisions you make are going to be made at that rate. So let's say something happened to your job last year and you only worked 3 months instead of 12 months. Or you worked 70 hours of overtime every week because you were in healthcare, right? Your marginal rate could be higher or lower. And how you want to treat that distribution could very easily change based on what your financial condition was for the year. Right? So when you look at how to take care of money, right, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is to think that it's all about investments. It's not just about investments. Investments go up and down, right? It really is what rolls through your tax return.
Talking about some specific penalties. What's the penalty to withdraw from your retirement account? I mean, before you reach 59.5.
So this becomes complex because people, including a previous president that we had, where from the podium he said that IRAs and retirement plans, they were not the same. He put them together because I think people presume that they're together. IRAs have an entirely different tax code, different creditor protection, different bankruptcy protection than qualified plans like 401ks, most 403bs, and 457 plans have. So if you happen to retire as a teacher or a doctor from a qualified 403b plan, or 401k plan, I should say, you can actually get money at 55, not 59.5, if you don't go to another job where you're making a lot more money, right? So you're allowed to have a little bit of income, like a paper route. I did one of those.
Yes.
You can detassel corn. Did that too. You just can't make a lot of money, right? So it's a minimal amount. But if you're truly going to separate service and not have a big girl job or a big boy job, you can actually get money out of a 401k at 55, not 59 and a half. It's still taxable. It just means you have no federal penalty. So very often when somebody comes to see us, and we sit down and have their next steps meeting and we're looking at their lives, right? Most of the time, people are going to want out of the 401k because you typically have better or at least more investment options. In our case, the fees and expenses are typically equal to or less than what they had in the 401k. Not always true, so you have to really be careful with that. But what will happen is we will leave some money inside of the 401k and we'll move the rest of the money to an IRA so that we have the investment authority to do what it is we do, but we still have access to income in case they need it.
Well, if you don't qualify for the 55 and you have to be 59 and a half to withdraw it, is it 10% or what is the penalty?
So it's full taxation. Again, we talked about the marginal income bracket,
Yes.
right? So it's going to be, it's the whatever your last dollar was taxed at. There is no capital gains taxation, short-term, long-term, or anything else that comes out of there. There's no what we would call preferential tax treatment that comes out of an IRA or a 401k or a 403b. So you've got a 10% penalty if you're over 59 and a half, plus full taxation on whatever the withdrawal amount is.
Okay, so what about basic? You're late filing your taxes. What kind of penalty are you looking at there?
Well, that depends. So the penalty for not taking money out of an IRA when you're forced to take it out, that's called a required minimum distribution. It moved from 70 and a half to now 72, based on not the CARES Act, which was in March, but the Secure Act, which was based in December of 19. When you look at that, it's a 50% penalty on what you should have withdrawn. As far as we know, there are no cases where the IRS has imposed the penalty if you self-reported. In other words, you called back and said, hey, it's 2022. I should have taken money out in 2021. I forgot. Here's the amount that I withdrew. We don't know of any case that we have seen. And when I say we, I am part of the Ed Slot Master Elite IRA program where we study this stuff 3 times a year. For a few days at a time, where we look at it from families across the country. And as far as we know, the IRS has not imposed that penalty. If you're audited and caught, you will pay a 50% penalty on the amount that you should have withdrawn that you didn't withdraw.
Is that probably the steepest penalty that you...
I don't know of anything that could be that steep. Even the estate tax, Angie, is not that high. Yes, so I would say that is the deepest, steepest penalty that the IRS has.
Well, and you hear all kinds of things, so I don't know if this is the truth or a myth, but can the IRS seize your retirement account?
That's a tough question. It's if the IRS, and I tell my wife this all the time, someday I'm going to meet they. I really want to beat that guy up. If they believe that you made an inappropriate contribution or an inappropriate investment, and there are very strict rules in terms of what you can invest in, especially in an IRA, those kind of things. If they believe you made an inappropriate contribution or investment, then they can disqualify the entire IRA. And so every now and then somebody will come in and they've got this strange idea. Their brother Jethro told them that this would be a great idea to do. And I'll look at him and they go, listen, Joe, it's $10,000. It's going to cost me more money to argue with Jethro than it is for me to make the investment. So we open a separate IRA. Remember, even though IRAs are individual retirement contracts, if there's anything I can tell you on the show tonight, that is very, very important. It's if you're going to do something silly, I almost said stupid, but that wouldn't be nice. If you're going to do something silly with your money and make an investment that you probably shouldn't be making, open up a separate account, your IRA, your Social Security number, still your money, still your beneficiary, but open it up and put it in a separate account. So if they do happen to make it disqualified, then the rest of your money is still safe from action.
Okay, quickly, this is a scenario. Let's say you handle all of the bills, you pay the taxes, you fill out the form, you do that yourself. If you forget to do that, is your spouse liable?
Yes. There is an innocent spouse rule that if I signed a return and I knew that I had done something intentionally wrong, then and Barb could prove that she didn't know, then she's protected under the innocent spouse rule. If we collectively made an error where we didn't pay taxes on a 1099, she's got the same penalty that I do. Sorry, thanks for playing. Appreciate it. Hey, you're listening to Consider This. I'm Joe Clark, along with Angi Kinser. If you got a question or comment, give Angi a call, 800-928-4001, and get signed up for your Next Steps meeting. We'll spend 90 minutes with you. We'll determine what you should do today, what you may want to do in the future, and if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you.